There's a moment in every man's life when he stares at the ceiling late at night and wonders if he's making the biggest mistake of his life. Not because he's afraid of love, but because he's seen what it can cost. He's seen brothers lose everything. He's seen men with fire in their eyes get reduced to silence. He's watched marriages that began with passion end in courts, loneliness, and regret. And he can't help but wonder, will that be him too? This isn't bitterness. This is fear dressed in silence. The fear of giving your soul to someone who might one day forget how to hold it. Men aren't talking about this, but they feel it. In their bones, in their bank accounts, in the part of their heart that no one ever sees. And if you've ever felt it too, if you've ever asked yourself, is this the path to happiness? This video isn't just for you, it is you. Watch till the very end. Because this truth may be hard to hear, but it might just save you years of silent suffering. Like, subscribe, and share this with the man who needs to hear it. No one told you the game would change after you said, I do. You walked into it with hope, with the belief that it would be a partnership, not perfect, but fair. Two people building one life together. That's what they made you believe. That's what you saw in the smiles on wedding days, in the photos on the wall, in the promises repeated like vows could guarantee loyalty. You thought love meant you were on the same team, and maybe for a while you were, but slowly, so slowly you didn't even notice at first, something started to shift. Conversations that used to feel like connections began to feel like negotiations. Every decision became a silent test. You started watching your words, not out of respect, but out of fear. Fear of setting off an emotional chain reaction you didn't understand. You began to feel like a stranger in your own home. A soldier walking through a minefield, unsure which step would be safe, and which would cost you a week of silence or a storm of blame. You kept telling yourself it would pass. Every couple goes through hard seasons, that this was just stress, or hormones, or life being life. But deep down, something inside you started to crack. You stopped laughing like you used to. You started keeping things to yourself. You found yourself saying yes when everything in you wanted to say no, because peace began to feel more important than honesty. And the worst part, you didn't even know when you started lying to yourself. You wanted partnership. What you got was performance. You became the provider, the protector, the peacekeeper, the predictable one. And over time, she stopped seeing your sacrifices as love and started seeing them as an obligation. What you gave was expected, not appreciated. And the more you gave, the less you felt seen. You were no longer playing as equals. You were on the field, bleeding, exhausted, carrying both your weight and hers, while being criticized for not doing more. It's a game you didn't agree to play, with rules that keep changing, referred by someone who doesn't see your pain. And yet you stayed, not because you were weak, but because you were loyal, because you remembered what it felt like in the beginning. Because you believed love could be resurrected if you just held on a little longer. But the truth is, love isn't a game, and if it ever starts to feel like one, you've already lost. You wanted a partner, not a competitor. You wanted to build, not to battle. But here you are, staring at a scoreboard that only counts your failures, and never your efforts. And maybe now you're starting to understand what you thought was partnership was never mutual. It was conditional. It was temporary. It was something that existed only as long as you performed a role, not lived as a man. This realization isn't meant to break you. It's meant to wake you up, because you deserve to be met, not managed. You deserve a bond, not a balance sheet. And you deserve to walk into love as a whole man, not a servant wearing a smile. If no one ever told you the rules change after marriage, let this be the moment you finally see the truth. Not so you'll hate her, but so you'll stop losing yourself trying to be enough for someone who already decided the score. You didn't see it happen, not at first. It starts small, the sigh when you forget something minor, the silence when you say something she doesn't like, the way affection is withheld, not because she's tired, but because she's disappointed. And slowly, you start adjusting, not out of growth, not out of self-awareness, but out of fear. You're not leading anymore. You're negotiating. You tell yourself love is about compromise. That peace is worth a few sacrifices. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being a man and started becoming a manager of moods, of tension, of expectations. You used to feel safe with her. Now you feel like you're walking through a house full of landmines. You find yourself overthinking before every conversation, editing your emotions, softening your opinions, not because you're wrong, but because you're tired. tired of the arguments, tired of the coldness, tired of the look she gives you when she feels let down by the version of you that's trying his hardest to keep the ship afloat. And here's what cuts the deepest. You're doing all this for love, but love stopped being the reward. It became the currency. Because now, it's not about who you are, it's about what you can do. What can you fix? What can you provide? It's about whether you meet the invisible standards that keep shifting every time you think you're getting it right. She used to love the way you laughed. Now she complains you're not serious enough. She used to say she admired your independence. Now she accuses you of being emotionally distant. She used to want your presence. Now she tallies your usefulness. And you begin to shrink. You don't talk about how exhausted you are, because it'll turn into another fight. You don't speak about how lonely it feels, because somehow it'll become your fault. You don't ask for more, because the last time you did, she made you feel like a burden. So you bargain. You do more. You buy peace with your silence. You trade your truth for her comfort. And the man you were begins to fade, not because you failed, but because you learned the hard way that love, in her world, is leverage. Conditional, measured, earned. And this is where it hits. You realize you've been loving with everything in you while being evaluated like an employee. You're not her man. You're her provider, her buffer, her scapegoat, her safety net, but never her equal. And yet you stay. Because the part of you that still believes in what you thought this was, that part is loyal to the dream, loyal to the version of her that once saw you, loyal to the idea that maybe if you just try harder, she'll come back to that place too. But she won't. Because once love turns into leverage, it stops being love. It becomes control wrapped in kindness, manipulation wearing perfume, emotional warfare disguised as a relationship. And if you don't wake up, you'll spend years apologizing for things you didn't do, breaking yourself to fix what's not yours, and losing your soul while trying to keep someone else comfortable. So let this hit you where it needs to. Not in your pride, but in your truth. You're not crazy. You're not weak. You've just been taught that love means proving yourself, when real love never needed a receipt. Your voice matters. Your needs matter. Who you are without giving, fixing, or sacrificing matters. And maybe today is the day you stop tiptoeing through your own life and start walking like a man again. They told you love was priceless, that when two people commit, money shouldn't matter, that marriage is about partnership, not possession. But no one warned you what happens when the partnership ends and the possession begins. Because the moment love breaks, the moment things unravel, it's not just about who was right or who was wrong. It's about who walks away protected and who walks away with pieces of his life tagged, priced, and taken. You don't see it coming. You're a good man. You provide. You give. You sacrifice. You believed in forever. You thought if you stayed loyal, if you did your part, you'd be safe. But marriage doesn't come with safety nets for men. It comes with obligations, with laws, with systems that don't ask who loved harder, they ask who earns more. And when it ends, no one cares how you cried. No one cares that you worked 2 jobs while she stayed home. No one cares that you paid for the house, the cars, the trips, the little luxuries that made her feel secure. Because when that paper is filed, your soul gets divided like property. The court doesn't look at your memories. It looks at your bank account. It doesn't hear the silence you endured, the cold shoulders, the nights you spent on the couch. It doesn't calculate the emotional cost of slowly losing the woman you married. It calculates assets, liabilities, income. She's not the woman you once loved anymore. She's your legal opponent. And suddenly the love of your life is sitting on the other side of a courtroom with a lawyer who knows exactly how to extract everything you built. Your house, negotiable. Your kids, complicated. Your savings, up for grabs. Your peace, shattered. And you're just trying to survive a war you never wanted to fight. This is what no one warned you about. That love could turn into litigation. That your role as a husband could become ammunition. That your kindness, your generosity, your efforts, all of it could be repackaged as evidence of your financial responsibility and therefore your obligation to keep giving long after the love is gone. And you're not bitter. You're just broken. Because it's not about the money. It's never just about the money. It's about power, about how the system hands it over like a weapon to someone you used to trust with your heart, about how being a man means you're expected to endure, to pay, to rebuild, while pretending it didn't destroy you. But here's the truth. Most men learn too late. Love might be free, but but marriage is a contract, and contracts have consequences. You thought you were entering a sacred union. What you actually signed was a business deal. And in this deal, you don't get to renegotiate when it starts hurting. You don't get to back out when the terms change. You just pay, in silence, in shame, in monthly reminders that your value as a man is now calculated by how much you can give without breaking. So let this be the moment you wake up. Because this isn't about hating women. This isn't about fearing marriage. This is about seeing clearly, about knowing what's really at stake, your freedom, your peace, your future. You can love deeply, you can give generously, but don't let anyone, not society, not tradition, not fear, tell you that your worth is measured by your wallet. Because when love turns legal, what's taken isn't just money, it's years, it's dignity, it's the belief that being a good man will always be enough, and sometimes, the only way to protect your heart is by protecting your name before you give it away. No one sees you break, because you don't scream, you don't collapse, you don't beg, you endure. That's what the world rewards you for. Not for feeling, but for functioning. You get praised when you keep moving, when you bury the storm inside and show up like nothing's wrong. That's what it means to be a man, right? And somewhere along the way, you started believing that your silence was strength, that needing less made you more, that asking for emotional support was a weakness. So you stopped asking. You stopped expecting anyone to notice when your eyes looked empty. You stopped explaining what the pressure feels like. You stopped needing comfort because comfort never came. And in that silence, something began to rot. Marriage was supposed to be your one safe space, the one person you could fall apart with, the place where your heart didn't have to wear armor. But for many men, marriage becomes the loneliest room in the house. You sit across from someone who says she loves you, but doesn't hear you, who says she supports you, but dismisses your sadness. You try to speak, not yell, not argue, just speak. And somehow, even that becomes a problem. So you stop, you suppress, you perform. You wear the everything's fine mask. You do what's expected. You show up, pay the bills, stay calm, hold steady, even as something inside you is quietly screaming for someone to ask if you're okay. Okay. But no one asks, because men aren't supposed to feel fragile. You're supposed to be the rock, even when you're drowning. So what do? You laugh when you don't want to. You make sex about release instead of connection. You go to work with tension in your chest and come home with silence in your soul. You carry burdens that no one even knows are there. And when it gets too loud inside, you either numb it or snap. And when you do snap, they call you cold, distant, and angry. But they never ask what led you there, because no one sees the 1,000 silent moments that broke you. They don't see how long you've been holding in your truth. How many times have you gone to bed feeling empty beside someone who claims to love you? How often you thought about leaving, but stayed because you were too afraid of being the villain in a story you never meant to write. You never wanted to be worshipped. You just wanted to be understood. You didn't need her to fix you. You just wanted her to care enough to notice you were falling. But she didn't. And so you did what men have been doing for centuries. You carried it alone. And now you're exhausted. Not because you're weak, but because you've been strong for too damn long without being seen. This is the suffering no one talks about, the emotional starvation of the modern man, the invisible weight you carry, the unspoken grief of being expected to give everything while being given almost nothing in return. But here's what I want you to hear now. You are not less of a man for feeling empty. You are not wrong for wanting softness, safety, and someone to just listen without judgment. You are not broken for needing more than applause for your performance. You are human, and if they don't see that, if they don't honor that, then maybe it's time you start honoring yourself. Not by becoming bitter, not by shutting down, but by remembering that your silence doesn't make you strong. Your truth does. You had dreams once, before the routine, before the demands, before the dull silence of duty replaced the roar of your ambition. There was a time you woke up hungry, not just to survive, but to build, to create, to conquer something that had your name written on it. And then life happened, and then she happened, and then marriage happened. At first, it felt like you were still running toward your vision, just with someone by your side. You thought she would cheer you on, push you higher, hold your fire when you got tired. But slowly, almost invisibly, that fire became something you were asked to tame. Be realistic. Take the safer path. Don't be selfish. And so, little by little, you started trading pieces of your purpose for peace. At first, it was small. Skipping a night of work, to avoid an argument, turning down an opportunity because she didn't approve, reassuring her at the cost of your voice. You called it compromise, you called it maturity, but somewhere along the way, you weren't just compromising your schedule, you were compromising your soul. The man who once chased legacy now chases calm. The man who once had ideas that scared him now lives inside a life that numbs him. And the worst part, you're told this is what success looks like. You're married, you're stable, you've got a house, a routine, maybe even kids. From the outside, you've arrived. But inside, you're starving because the dream never left. It just got quieter. And every time you suppress it, you die a little more. And she doesn't understand it. Not really. Because to her, stability is the dream. Safety is the reward. But for you, that's death in disguise. You weren't built to live a life that just looks good on paper. You were born to build something that echoes after you're gone. But marriage, when it's with the wrong person, doesn't honor that. It doesn't feed it, it suffocates it. Not because she's evil, not because she wants to hurt you, but because she doesn't see that side of you. And what people don't see, they can't support. So you shrink, you explain less, you try not to dream too loud, you become the version of yourself that keeps things stable, that keeps her smiling, that doesn't stir the waters. And you think that's noble, until one day you wake up and realize you don't recognize yourself anymore. The fire is gone, the hunger is gone. The man who once wanted more has settled for less, and the world will never tell you this. They'll praise you for staying, for sacrificing, for being responsible, but they'll never show you what it cost to give up your calling for someone else's comfort. Because when the wrong marriage takes root, it doesn't just wound your heart, it kills the man you were born to become. And that's not love, that's a slow death dressed as commitment. But here's the truth, it's not too late. That fire in your chest, it might be buried, but it's not gone. That hunger in your gut, it might be ignored, but it still wakes you up in the middle of the night. You don't have to stay small to be loved. You don't have to trade your purpose for partnership. You don't have to bury your future just to keep someone else from feeling insecure. Because if love costs you your calling, it's not love, it's prison. And maybe today is the day you stop apologizing for the man you were born to be and start rebuilding the dream you were never meant to give up. They handed you a script the moment you were born. Grow up, be strong, get a good job, find a good woman, get married, provide, protect. That's what makes you a real man, and you believed it not because it felt right, but because everyone else did too. You saw it in movies, you heard it from your father, you felt it in the pressure behind every question. When are you settling down? When are you getting serious? When are you becoming a man? So you did it. You checked the boxes. You found someone. You stood at that altar and thought, this is it. This is when I become him, the man I'm supposed to be. The man society will finally respect, the man she'll love. Because I showed up, committed, and gave her everything. But no one warned you what marriage can do to masculinity when it's built on a myth. Because the ring didn't complete you. It confused you. You were told that marriage makes a man, but all it did was expose how little you were allowed to define manhood on your own. Now you're not just expected to be strong, you're expected to be silent. You're not just the provider, you're the emotional sponge. The punching bag for her moods, her fears, her unmet expectations, and every time you ask for space, you're told you're distant. Every time you express frustration, you're told you're aggressive. Every time you set a boundary, you're told you're controlling, and suddenly, the man who was once encouraged to lead is now accused of being toxic for doing exactly that. You bend, you soften, you hold your tongue, not because it's who you are, but because you were told that keeping her happy is what makes you valuable. And so begins the quiet unraveling. Masculinity wasn't completed by the ring, it was compromised by it. Because what no one told you was that real masculinity isn't found in sacrifice alone, it's found in balance, in knowing when to give, and when to stand firm, in loving deeply, but never abandoning your identity, in leading with presence, not permission. But marriage, when filtered through the wrong lens, turns men into providers who are never allowed to need, into protectors who are never allowed to rest, into warriors who are never allowed to feel. And if you're not careful, you become a man built around her definition of masculinity, not yours. You smile when you're supposed to. You stay quiet when it's tense. You show up, pay up, grow up, even as a part of you starts to vanish, and no one sees it, because they still think you're winning, because you've got the title, the home, the life. But what is the life of a man worth if he can't be fully himself inside it. The world will never stop handing you scripts, but you don't have to read them anymore. Masculinity is not a role you earn by enduring. It's not a medal handed out at the end of a long marriage. It's not measured by how much you give up to keep someone else comfortable. It's something you define, and if you don't, they will. They'll tell you being passive is polite, that being agreeable is love, that being small is humble, but real masculinity isn't quiet compliance, it's presence, it's true, it's owning your strength without apology. So take the myth, rip it up, and write your definition. Being a man isn't about proving yourself through marriage, it's about never forgetting who you are, with or without one. You've carried the weight, you've lived through the silence, you've swallowed the confusion, the loss, the quiet humiliation of feeling like you gave everything, and somehow it still wasn't enough. And now you're angry. Not loud, screaming anger, but quiet, exhausted rage. The kind that doesn't show up in fights, but lingers in your chest like smoke. The kind that eats at your ability to trust, to believe, to try again. But before this becomes your identity, before you let bitterness become your default setting, take a breath. This story isn't over yet, because this lesson, this moment, this chapter, it's not about blaming her. It's about awakening you. You didn't get here because you were weak. You got here because you were asleep. You believed what the world told you, that if you just loved harder, provided more, stayed steady, didn't rock the boat, it would all work out. But no one told you the cost of staying asleep. No one told you that silence doesn't protect you, it erases you. That peace at the expense of your truth isn't peace at all, it's self-abandonment. And now you're awake. You see the patterns, you feel the damage. You understand that not all love is healthy, and not all commitment is mutual. But here's the trap. When you finally see the truth, it's tempting to turn that clarity into anger, to use what you've learned as a weapon, to declare war on everyone who made you feel disposable. And that's how bitterness grows, not from pain, but from unprocessed pain. But you don't have to live like that. You don't have to hate her to heal you. You don't have to shame her to free yourself, because freedom isn't found in revenge. It's found in responsibility. You get to rewrite the story, not by pretending it didn't happen, but by choosing how it ends. You get to draw new boundaries, not as walls, but as mirrors, showing people how to treat you by how you now treat yourself. You get to rebuild your life, not on the ruins of resentment, but on the foundation of clarity. You don't have to be the man she needed. You don't have to be the man society applauds. You only have to become the man you respect. And if that means walking away from what doesn't serve your truth, so be it. If that means being alone for a season so you can hear your voice again, so be it. Because this is what awakening looks like. It's not dramatic, it's not violent, it's quite a strength. It's choosing peace over punishment, truth over tradition, self-respect over self-sacrifice. And maybe the most radical thing you can do now is forgive, not for them, not to erase the past, but to prove to yourself that they didn't win. What happened didn't define you, that you're bigger than the heartbreak, stronger than the silence, and wiser than the man you used to be. So rewrite the story, without rage, without apology, without bitterness, because you never had to lose to love. You just had to wake up and love yourself enough not to disappear again.